There are 5 levels of power. Most men will never climb beyond the first. They will die nameless, submissive, obedient, mistaking endurance for strength. But those who reach the last level transform into something else entirely. They are not kings. They are not rulers. They are the architects of rulers. Their names disappear, yet their commands echo. They are shadows that move nations, leaving no trace behind. This is not a tale meant to inspire. It is a manual, a cold one, beginning where most lives end. Level 1, the powerless. The powerless man does not realize he is powerless. That is the genius of the design. He believes his opinions are his own. He believes his choices carry weight. He thinks the freedoms he clings to were granted by fairness, when in truth they were calculated gifts. Because a man convinced he is free becomes his own guard. He lives bound in invisible chains, defending the very hands that forged them. The powerless live on routine and reaction. They consume, they respond, they obey. But ask them why they wake, why they work, why they suffer, and they cannot answer without reciting another man's lines. Because I must, because that's life. These are not answers. They are chains dressed as wisdom. Look closely. They fill cities. They fill schools. They fill churches, jobs, and stadiums. Yet, upon closer inspection, they are identical. They are the crowd, the grey mist that conceals those above. The powerless man is not defined by lack of skill or desire. He is defined by submission. He waits for direction. He seeks approval. He fears isolation of thought because thinking alone risks exile from the herd. So he stays silent. He laughs when others laugh. He nods when others nod. He bows his back to endure, never realizing that endurance has cost him his soul. Worse still, the powerless mock the powerful. They throw stones from below and call it virtue. They condemn ambition as evil. They call discipline toxic. They romanticize weakness because strength reminds them of what they refuse to become. And so they craft coping creeds, religions that praise suffering, ideologies that punish assent, politics that reward dependence. They pretend resignation is morality. But morality without power is theater. It is a costume worn by those too afraid to fight. Study them closely. Their lives are ruled by fear, fear of rejection, fear of risk, fear of punishment, but above all, fear of responsibility. Because admitting they are not powerless would force them to act. And action is terrifying for one who has built life upon waiting. The powerless believe the world owes them fairness, that somewhere, someone will reward their suffering. But suffering is not payment, obedience is not virtue, and hope is not a strategy. A man trapped at level 1 will always be exploited. His labor, his hours, his attention, rented to the highest bidder. He becomes a vessel, a mule, a body to fuel the machine. And when the body breaks, it is discarded without ceremony. No history remembers him. No monuments rise for his sacrifice. He lived quietly, he died quietly, and the world continued untouched. Now ask yourself something, not as a viewer, not as a listener, as a man. Where do you stand on this ladder? Do not answer with wishful pride. Be honest. Do you live reactively? Do you wait for others to tell you what matters? Do you scroll, agree, follow, nod? Are you hoping life will improve because you have suffered enough? The powerless do not feel weak. They feel drained. They feel tired. They confuse exhaustion with hard work. They call busyness progress. But progress without power is just motion in circles like a horse bound to a carousel, round and round, but never forward. If you see yourself here, take no shame, only warning, because those who stay here do not merely lose the game. They never even realize a game existed. They mistake endurance for wisdom. They believe survival itself is proof of intelligence. But ask yourself, if you have endured this long and still feel restless, still feel anxious, still feel replaceable, then what have you built? Survival is not success. Endurance is not purpose, and obedience is not honor. It is time to awaken. Level 1 is not your cage. It is your summons. Beyond it are the minds who enforce, manipulate, command, and disappear. If you wish to ascend, you must stop lying to yourself about where you are. Power begins with clarity, and clarity begins with pain, but clarity is dangerous. Once you see truth, you cannot unsee it. And the moment a powerless man realizes his state, he stands at a fork in the road. Stay numb or awaken. If he awakens, he enters level 2, the enforcer. Here is where most men who taste power first arrive. They are no longer asleep but not yet free. They have gained strength, physical, financial, or social. But remember this, strength without strategy is only polished servitude. The enforcer serves. He executes orders. He preserves the system. He may rise in rank, but never in sovereignty. And worst of all, he convinces himself this is the summit. The enforcer is dangerous because it feels like dominance. He wears the uniform. He bears the badge. He manages the ranks. He issues commands. He feels admired. But beneath the surface, his power is borrowed. It is not his to own. He wields it only so long as he remains loyal to the order above him. He is strong, but tethered, impressive yet disposable, and when the command changes, he shifts with it, even if it betrays everything he once defended. This is why countless officers, managers, soldiers, and overseers live in silent torment. Needed, but never sovereign. Respected, but never free. Trusted to execute. Forbidden to question. For the moment he begins to think too deeply, he turns into a liability. Yet the enforcer is indispensable. No system can function without him. Higher powers depend on his loyalty, his predictability, his willingness to bury ambition for the mirage of authority. And he accepts the pact. For status, he surrenders independence. He gains structure, but loses vision. He gains command, but not creation. That is why so many men construct lives around rituals of control, not to lead, but to feel dominant. They govern their households through fear. They bark orders at subordinates. They obsess over rules and punishments. But all of it, every gesture of authority, is a mask, hiding one truth. Someone else writes their orders. You will find them everywhere. The middle manager who polices with pride. The officer who enforces laws he doubts in secret. The father who imitates discipline but trembles at irrelevance. The enforcer clings to duty because duty hands him a script. He dreads silence because silence would expose his doubts. He dreads reflection because reflection would reveal how much he traded away for structure. He guards gates but never asks who built them or why. He breaks the backs of others for the sake of rules he never authored. And when the powers above shift course, the enforcer must salute and obey, no matter how much it degrades him, because borrowed power can always be revoked. Yet there is one sign, a fracture in the armor, that marks an enforcer ready to evolve. It is disillusionment. That bitter hour when the respect he bled for feels hollow. When medals, promotions, and applause no longer drown the echoing question, is this all? That question is sacred, because only a man who has felt power but lost faith in it can ascend. Only a man who has tasted control but realized he was still controlled will dare step outside the line. And stepping outside the line, my friend, is the first breath of freedom. But beware, the climb upward is not heroic. It is not celebrated. When the enforcer questions the system, he becomes a threat. The same hands that clapped for him now point in accusation. He is branded disloyal, arrogant, dangerous, and so most enforcers remain confined. They smother their questions, they silence their doubts, they protect their paycheck, their title, their rank. Yet deep inside they know they have traded truth for comfort. They know they have become efficient machines, powerful but programmed, commanding but replaceable, valuable but disposable. The enforcer is not frail, but he is boxed, and the box is crafted so finely that few ever try to leave it. They polish it, they praise it, they build their lives within it. But if you seek true power, the kind that bends reality in silence, that shapes events without noise, then level 2 is not your destination, it is your awakening, to see the structure, to see the strings, to see the hidden hands whose fingerprints stain everything, though their faces are never shown. If you have the courage to question, if applause has begun to taste hollow, if you sense that obedience and power are not the same, then you are ready. Ready to meet the next level, the one the enforcer dreads, the one no order can command because it lives in shadows and rules in whispers. The man who questions authority but has yet to claim his own steps into the most unstable realm of all. Level 3, the schemer. This is the level of masks. Here, obedience dies and a sharper force takes its place. Strategic self-interest. The schemer does not serve. He maneuvers. He studies people like maps. He trades truth for leverage. He listens more than he speaks, praises more than he challenges, and observes not for meaning but for advantage. At this level, power is not seized through force. It is harvested in silence, drop by drop, through persuasion, manipulation, and design. And yet, for all his cunning, the schemer remains exposed. To manipulate, he must be present, still visible, still needed. This level rewards intellect, but punishes attachment. Loyalty becomes impossible, for every bond is provisional, every smile is measured, every word is weighed. Each exchange is a transaction, a rehearsal for control. He thrives in courts, in corporations, in movements, anywhere hierarchy breathes, but where the throne is fragile. He becomes a king's favorite, a CEO's advisor, a general's confidant. But never the king himself, for his strength depends on shadows. He is the whisper behind the verdict, the hand that plants the idea, the tongue that redirects blame, that spreads rumor, that invents enemies. Yet should the light ever fall fully upon him, the illusion shatters. Influence only lives in secrecy. The moment he is caught scheming, he is marked. The danger of this level is not defeat. It is triumph without foundation. The schemer is often the cleverest man in the room, yet he never stops scanning that room for threats. He dreads exposure. He dreads being outplayed. He trusts no one because he sees too clearly how trust is used. And so he turns inward, deeper into the spiral. He gathers secrets like coins, favors like weapons, relationships like insurance. But inside, he decays, because a man who cannot be authentic, who must forever pretend, forgets who he was before the mask. And when that happens, even triumphs taste like ash. He wins arguments, but never finds peace. He gathers allies, but not loyalty. He climbs ladders, but never knows if tomorrow it will be pulled from under him. Yet the schemer is essential. Power structures rely on him because he does what the enforcer cannot. He bends minds instead of bodies. He alters culture, reshapes alliances, sways opinion. He shifts people without lifting a hand. But here lies his tragedy. In gaining influence, he loses all safety. His power exists only in tension. The moment he pauses, he becomes replaceable. The ruler starts doubting him. The people start resenting him. He becomes the scapegoat, obvious and convenient, because everyone knows he is clever. And cleverness, unguarded, inspires fear. Most schemers end with betrayal, a knife in the back or a whisper that seals their fate. They are remembered not for wisdom, but suspicion. Their brilliance becomes the evidence against them. Still, some men savor this level. They thrive on being needed by the powerful. They enjoy playing both sides, collecting debts, steering conversations, and for a season they flourish. But look deeper. The highest schemers are not truly chasing power, they are fleeing irrelevance. They have tasted closeness to greatness, but lack the courage to bear its cost. They would rather be vital in secret than sovereign in truth, because sovereignty demands exposure, blame, and risk. And most schemers, despite their cunning, are cowards at heart. They prefer manipulating the king to being the king, because the king stands in the open, and openness makes you a target. But if you listening now are a schemer, or feel the schemer stirring in you, know this: there is a door, a narrow one. It requires sacrifice, not of intelligence, not of strategy, but of the addiction to invisibility. It demands stepping out of the game and asking, what if I stopped shaping the room and started owning it? What if I stopped advising kings and became one? Even if it meant being hated, hunted, exposed. That is the price of transformation. And only those willing to lose their shield, to risk being seen, blamed and challenged, ever ascend beyond this stage. The stage of visible power, the throne, the crown, the role the schemer dreads because it cannot hide. But those who survive it command more than whispers. They command worlds. To cross from manipulation to command is to step into fire. The schemer hides behind influence. The ruler stands bare before the world. This is level 4. The ruler. No masks, no whispers, no excuses left. The ruler must speak, must act, must bear the weight of every consequence his words ignite. His authority is no longer borrowed or implied, it is declared. And that declaration paints him as adored, envied, and hunted all at once. Because when you wear the crown, the daggers are not hidden. They come smiling. They come praising. They come as friends, lovers, advisors, and they wait for the instant you falter. The ruler has what the schemer dreads, visibility. But he pays with what the schemer clings to, safety. Power here is not built on manipulation, it is built on presence. The ruler becomes the state, the company, the cause. His name becomes law, his face becomes symbol, but with this comes burden. A single error, a missed calculation, a flicker of doubt, and the crowd turns, because the crowd does not love the man, they love the idea of the man, and the moment he betrays that idea, he becomes the villain. This is why rulers live haunted by paranoia, not because they are unstable, but because they see what others deny. Loyalty is temporary, admiration is shallow, and the same crowd that crowns you will cheer your fall. And yet the ruler must act. He cannot delay, cannot vanish, cannot deflect. Every move reshapes the world beneath him. That is his gift, the power to build. No longer scheming in shadow, now creating in daylight. A ruler with vision can ignite an era. A ruler without vision can ruin one. This is why history remembers rulers. Not advisors, not enforcers, not generals, but the ruler, the signature, the speech, the command. The crown makes a man immortal or infamous, and the line between the two is razor thin. But make no mistake, this is still not the final level, for rulership is still a role. A throne can be seized, a title can be stripped. The ruler, though mighty, is exposed. He must perform. He must justify. He must endure. And as he does, enemies sharpen their stories. Hidden men, silent watchers, collect his failures like treasure. Because they understand a truth the ruler cannot speak aloud. The throne in view is not the seat of true power. It is the lightning rod. And so the ruler hardens. He learns to smile through betrayal, to reward silence, punish uncertainty, to calculate kindness or see it used against him. And in this process, something dies. The part of him that once longed to be loved is buried, not in bitterness, but in necessity. For power demands detachment. The ruler must be just, but never naive, inspiring but never dependent, listening but never needing consent. Fail this paradox, and he becomes a puppet, his strings pulled by hands unseen. Still, men dream of this level. They lust for the crown, the applause, the spectacle. They want to be admired, seen, obeyed. But they do not see the cost. They do not see the restless nights, the endless wait, the constant calculation. They think they envy the king until they understand how little peace he owns, how every word is measured, how every alliance is a gamble, how every act of strength is also a challenge, inviting someone to test it. But inside he withers. A man who must forever perform cannot remember the man beneath the mask, and when that happens, even victories taste empty. He wins debates, but never finds calm. He recruits allies, but not true loyalty. He scales heights without any certainty they won't be yanked away beneath him tomorrow. Yet the schemer is indispensable. Systems rely on him because he accomplishes what the enforcer cannot. He bends minds instead of backs. He reshapes culture, reconfigures alliances, and redirects public will without lifting a hand. But his tragedy is this: by gaining such influence, he sacrifices safety. His power exists only in tension. Pause for a moment, and he is expendable. The ruler doubts him. The people resent him. He becomes the obvious scapegoat because everyone sees his craftiness, and unguarded cleverness breeds fear. Most schemers end betrayed, stabbed in shadows or erased by rumor. They are remembered not for their insight, but for the suspicion that clung to them. Their gifts become the proof used against them. Still, some men crave this level. They feast on being indispensable to the powerful. They play both sides, collect obligations, steer conversations, and for a season they flourish. But look closer. The great schemers are not truly pursuing power. They are fleeing oblivion. They have neared greatness and bulk at its price. They prefer secret indispensability over open sovereignty. Sovereignty demands exposure, blame, risk, and most schemers, clever as they are cowardly at their core. They would rather manipulate the king than be the king, because visibility makes you a target. If you listen now and feel the schemer rising in you, know this: a door remains, but it is narrow. It asks for sacrifice, not of your wit or plans, but of your craving for invisibility. It demands you step out and ask, what if I stopped shaping the room and began owning it? What if I ceased advising kings and became one, even at the cost of being hated, hunted, exposed? That is the price of change. Only those willing to lose their edge, to risk being seen and blamed and tested, break through to the next stage. Visible authority, the crown, the throne, the thing the schemer fears because it cannot hide. Those who endure it command more than whispers. They command worlds. To move from manipulation to rule is to walk into fire. The schemer works from the dark. The ruler stands bare before the world. This is level 4, the ruler. No more masks, no more whispers, no plausible deniability. The ruler must speak, act, and accept the consequences his words unleash. His authority is declared, not implied. That declaration makes him adored, envied, and hunted at once. Wearing the crown, the daggers do not hide, they smile. They praise. They arrive as friends, lovers, advisors, waiting for the moment you falter. The ruler possesses what the schemer fears, visibility, but he pays with what the schemer clings to, safety. Power here is built on presence, not leverage. The ruler is the state, the corporation, the movement. His name reads like law, his face a symbol. With that comes burden. A single misstep, a wrong call, and the mass will turn. Because they did not love the man, they loved the idea of him. When he disappoints that idea, he becomes the villain. Rulers live with constant suspicion, not from instability, but from seeing what others deny. Loyalty is temporary, admiration thin, and the same crowd that crowned you will cheer your fall. Still, the ruler must act. He cannot delay, hide, or deflect. Each decision reshapes the world beneath him. That is his power, to build. No longer whispering in the dark, he constructs in daylight. A visionary ruler can birth an era. A blind one can annihilate it. History remembers rulers, not advisors or enforcers. names that signed decrees, led armies, delivered speeches. The crown renders a man immortal or infamous. The margin is razor-thin, but do not mistake rulership for the end. It is still a role, a position, and positions can be seized. The ruler, though mighty, is exposed. He must perform, justify, endure. Enemies sharpen their narratives. Unseen watchers collect his failures like treasure because they understand what he cannot say aloud. The visible throne is not the true seat of power. It is the lightning rod. So the ruler hardens. He learns to smile through betrayal, to reward silence and punish unpredictability, to make kindness calculated or have it turned against him. In that process, something dies. The part of him that sought to be loved is buried, not from bitterness, but from necessity. Power demands detachment. The ruler must be just, but not naive, inspiring, but never dependent, listening, but never needing agreement. Fail at this paradox, and he becomes a puppet, his strings pulled by hands he cannot name. Still, men dream of this level. They lust for crowns, applause, and spectacle, but they do not see the cost, the sleepless nights, the unceasing wait, the endless calculation. They think they envy the king until they learn how little peace a crown affords, how every word is measured, how every alliance is a wager, how every show of strength invites a challenger. Most men fantasize about ruling and recoil from its burden. They want sovereignty's spoils without its duties, and in that desire they reveal their unfitness. But if you already stand in this fire, if you know what it means to command and carry consequence, if you feel the loneliness of the top seat, yet have not broken beneath it, then you are closer than most. The final level wears no crown, occupies no throne, issues no speeches. It is invisible, bending ruler, schemer, and enforcer alike from behind the curtain. That level is not for praise seekers. It is for those who seek permanence. The most powerful man in the room is never in the room. He never raises his voice, yet men kill in his name. He does not hang in portraits, yet regimes bend to his will. This is level 5, the puppet master. He is not king. He is why kings exist. His power is felt, not seen, present in choices others believe they made freely, in laws others think they authored. His genius is disassociation, control without ownership, authorship without signature, rule without exposure. He does not command directly. He engineers circumstances so people choose what he already decided. To grasp this level is to abandon ego. The puppet master shuns applause. Recognition is weakness. A name is a target. A role can be stripped. But a myth, a force behind the curtain endures. He survives because no one can prove he exists. His fingerprints are everywhere, but his identity is vapor. Try to expose him, and you are branded paranoid. Succeed, and he has already arranged your replacement. That is the brilliance of true power. It does not depend on a single body. It flows, reincarnating through systems, symbols, and proxies like a virus with no cure, hiding in the host's DNA. He speaks through others. The CEO who greenlights a surprise merger, the politician who flips his platform overnight, the cultural figure who shifts the conversation with one post. These are not accidents. They are designs. Most will never trace them. They argue symptoms and never follow the quiet source because the source is too smooth, too embedded, too silent. The puppet master does not wage war for power. He sets the board so others fight for him. He manufactures rebellion when needed to reset the field, purge threats, and remind rulers their grip is rented. He knows visible power breeds resentment. The crown becomes a target, the billionaire a villain, the general a tyrant. But what cannot be seen cannot be attacked. What is unnamed cannot be overthrown. He cloaks himself in foundations, advisory councils, offshore vehicles, cultural sway. He bankrolls both sides, backs rivals, whispers to kings and shelters their enemies. He plays for generations, while others chase quarterly wins and election cycles. Yet not every schemer becomes a puppet master, nor every ruler disappear into the mist. To reach this level demands one last death, the death of identity. The puppet master has no face, no fixed allegiance, no binding ideology. He is adaptable because he belongs to none. Trusted broadly, owned by none, that is how he endures. Loyalty here is transactional, relationships expendable, even self-image must remain fluid. Pride is a liability, outcomes are all that matter. This is the coldest, purest form of power. To influence without credit, to control without acknowledgement, to vanish and still determine the outcome. Most men cannot imagine it. Their egos demand recognition, their pride craves praise and fear. That is why they leave trails and remain vulnerable. They want to be seen, to feel they matter. The puppet master prefers to be forgotten and keep the control. He would rather be unknown and still feared, rule in silence rather than reign in sound. That is why he is untouchable. Nobody rallies against a whisper. If you have followed this path, from faceless masses to loyal enforcer, cunning manipulator, isolated king, and now stare into the abyss of absolute detachment, ask yourself, are you willing to vanish to win? To trade your name for legacy, your face for force, your fame for permanence? Most are not. Most need visibility to validate worth. But those who endure this final transformation become something else. Not men, not mere rulers, but architects, ghosts, immortals who shape civilization while staying invisible in its history. If you have reached this far, something inside you already knows. You were not meant to remain powerless. Something in you has pierced the illusion and refuses to obey. You have glimpsed real power. Not the loud, performative kind sold to the masses, but the silent kind that builds without asking permission. The moment you saw it, a part of you began to change. Now tell me in the comments, are you willing to walk this path, to be feared instead of praised, to be misunderstood rather than liked, to disappear from their applause so you can win in truth? Are you ready to abandon comfort, image, and approval for something unshakable? If this struck a chord, if it made you uneasy or opened your eyes, write in the comments, I choose power in silence. Let's see how many are truly prepared, not just to rise, but to vanish from the noise and rise anyway. And don't scroll past the next video. You're closer than you think. What comes next matters more than you know. I'll meet you there.